Transactional networking sucks. And I found that a lot of the places that I was walking into trying to make connections were places that excelled at transactions, but really struggled to be places of strong relationship building.
Welcome to Brand on the Rocks, the podcast that distills bold ideas into clear messages you can actually use. Each week, we serve up conversations, audits, and straight pours of insight to help you cut through the noise and grow your business. Hosted by brand strategist Ryan Holck, this is where clarity comes neat and your brand gets remembered.
Welcome to Brand on the Rocks. Today is, it's going to be a solo episode. I've been doing a lot of interviews recently, had some absolutely amazing guests. You might want to go back and check out some of the recent conversations we've had about building trust and what it takes as like agency owners to make sure your content is connecting, how to, as business leaders, make sure that the public facing portion of your business is aligned with the internal culture so that people's experience with your brand is congruent across combinations. Frankly, it's been some great conversations, and I've realized in the process that I'm blessed to have some really smart friends. So it's been a great opportunity to have some of those conversations. But today I've been thinking about something for a while now, and it kind of has hit home again in the last week or two. And that really is around the idea of, are we as business leaders seeking to be transactional or relational in our connections, and specifically in the ways that we go about networking with people? And I have to be honest that networking is a frustrating thing for me. 12 years roughly, 12 plus years into working for myself, having an agency, doing consulting, doing a lot of brand work, messaging work. And networking has been kind of a love-hate relationship for me. And if I'm honest, it's been more of a hate relationship than anything. And part of that has come down to the fact that really transactional networking sucks. And I found that a lot of the places that I was walking into trying to make connections, trying to figure out who do I need to know and where do I get business leads and how do I build relationships, were places that excelled at transactions, but really struggled to be places of strong relationship building. I tried a lot of things. Like I went to chamber events. I went and talked to Rotary people who were really honest and said, don't waste your time here. I went to entrepreneurs book clubs. I did mastermind weekends. And what I found was I kept coming back to the same core set of problems. Was for our businesses, for my business, for the businesses I serve to really be effective, we have a very small margin of time to build the best relationships we can. And I also recognize that relationships compound with time and expand as they get deeper and better. But the foundation of those relationships has to be something more than the transaction that I'm trying to get. I need to make a sale. When I led relationship building and networking with I need to make a sale, I left very frustrated in most of those rooms because I felt like if I didn't leave there with that value add, if I didn't have something amazing to show for it, no one had my card who was going to call me the next day, then I felt like it had been a waste. And what I realized in the process, and I'm continuing to realize, is that when I go into networking opportunities from a relational standpoint, how can I serve this room? How can I show up and help people out? How can I just be here to, yes, build relationships? Because at the end of the day, frankly, that's how my business grows. That's how your business grows, is building those relationships. But walking in with a sense of, I'm going to be relationship first, transaction second, and sometimes really relationship, let's serve people well and then hope the transaction happens at the end. And in some ways, I feel like that's a flip of the model that I've seen a lot of people really example in a lot of rooms. And so as I've been thinking about this, I've got a couple examples in my life of places where it's worked incredibly well. And I've learned in those moments that community changes things. When our networking goes beyond showing up on a Tuesday night to an event for an hour and a half to how can I build community with these people? How can I build relationship with these people? How could I think differently about the way I'm having connections? I showed up to a LinkedIn meetup that was hosted by another agency owner recently. And his whole goal of the event was I'm not looking for new leads. I'm looking to build connections with other people doing similar types of work or similar heart for how you tell stories and how you get your business story marketed, where we can share ideas, we could share principles, we could share best practices on what is and isn't working. And it changed the dynamic of the group very quickly because as we sat for coffee, and there was 6 or 8 of us, we realized very quickly that while each of us technically had our own business that needed marketing, we really did very different things. And that some of the connections that I made in that room have carried on. I've had some of those people on my podcast. I've had coffee multiple times with other agency owners, other people who are doing a little bit in different niche kind of ideas, kind of things in their business, finding creative ways to serve customers differently. And what it really came down to was I secure enough as a business owner to walk into a room with people that in some ways I could approach from hey, they're competitors. We're looking for some similar customers. Or can I walk into this room with a sense of how can we help serve each other so that we can serve our customers better? And that moment takes a little bit of there's an ego kind of moment where you got to think, why am I really here? What am I doing here? What am I hoping to walk away with? What do I want to add to this room? And yet, in the midst of it, I discovered for the people who leaned in, it was a very different experience. The meetup lasted, I don't know, 90 minutes or something. I think I was there almost 2.5 hours because a group of us hung out and started talking shop and, oh, I'm trying this and I'm trying this. And I had a customer do that and that didn't quite work, but I did. And all of a sudden it went from a transactional, I just got to find a lead to we could actually help each other. This could be a cooperative relationship where even though we are in the same community and we may serve similar clients, there are ways that we could think differently about our networking and our connections. And it started to really make a pivot for me. I have for years, I say years since COVID, been connected to an event and a community called The Thing. The Thing events, they happen a couple times a year. Nashville and Orlando. I've attended ones in LA as well. Sometimes they're mastermind weekends, sometimes they're actual events at a hotel in like a ballroom or something and room full of people. But the interesting thing that I found in thinking about networking and relationships in that setting was that the first time that I showed up in the room, I was frankly kind of nervous. I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know if the investment I was making to be present was actually going to be, the best use of my dollars. Like I had some internal hesitancies. But what I found very quickly was that the right people in the room changes that drastically. And the the way that Terry Weaver, who puts on that event and kind of facilitates that community, leads really that group of people, is in a handout, giving first kind of idea and really culture, that he has with intention curated the room in such a way that there are people there are entrepreneurs from various niches serving very different people. But at the end of the day, each of them shows up wanting to serve the others in the room, looking for ways that they could connect, willing to share their expertise in their specific area, their specific niche, their specific product vertical in ways that I've not seen in a lot of other places. And doing it in a way where there's not a green room where there's people hidden in the back. You know, the speakers on stage are not hidden. The person who just presented in front of this small group, is not disappearing 5 minutes after and they're out the back door and gone. But having a very open-handed, how can I help your business succeed? How can you help my business succeed? What are the areas where there are overlap where we could serve each other? And one of the very first events that I attended with the thing in LA had a day at Disneyland with a former Imagineer who walked us through and talked about some of the creative process and the brainstorming process and the behind the scenes that you don't see in business or in Disney rather, about how the things you saw as you walked through a park actually came to exist. And he applied them then to what is it like in business when you're in that ideation, that creation mode, to think about all the elements that go into a project before the public ever knows they exist. And that day spilled over into a one-day event. And I made the decision after that first day where I went, okay, these are people who are serious about being relational, about connection, about really sharing not just the public side of business, but what it takes to build a thriving business and acknowledging that a lot of what you do is hidden in the background. That I was going to show up the next day early and I was going to help set up and I was going to help serve in any way possible. And so I showed up, and I think that first day I helped put some banners up and check the sound system or test mics or something. Nothing that was life altering. But what I realized in the moment was because I showed up mentally with I'm here to serve and connect, not just see what can I take from this room in a transactional way, that my entire approach to the day and the event was dramatically different. That I went in with a very different heart attitude towards it, that it wasn't just about how's this going to help my business, but how are the relationships I can grow in this place going to dramatically change my future? And it has. For those of you who've listened to multiple episodes of the podcast, the reality is I've talked about the thing more than once. I've talked about some of the community. I've got an episode coming up in the next couple of weeks with another community member, Diana Alt. You've heard from some others that are in that community. But that community, because Terry has built the culture around a sense of how do we serve each other, the entirety of the culture is relationship first, relational networking, relational service to others. And there's actually an event coming up, kind of a shameless plug that Terry didn't ask for, but the thing Nashville is June 7, 8, and 9. It's hosted just outside of Nashville proper in Franklin at a hotel. There'll be a group of us there for 3 days. I think there's 18, 20 speakers over those 3 days. And it is people who with intention are showing up in the room to give and to serve relationally out of their expertise. And if you, like me, have shown up to events where you're like, I think I'm smarter than the person on stage. I think I'm doing this better than them. Why are they a speaker here? This is not that kind of event. This is an event where the people on stage are practitioners, where they are actually doing this every day, where it's working in their business. They are teaching not out of concept, but out of proven ideas. And so if you're interested, thethingnashville.com, use code I'm with Ryan at checkout and you'll get, I believe it's a 10% discount on your ticket for that event. Would love to see you there. If you actually take me up on that, come find me at the event because I am a speaker. I'm going to be talking about stories and how we connect stories to our business and marketing. But so I've got these two places in my life, this entrepreneurs event, LinkedIn kind of thing, where I met people and my mindset about relational building was kind of challenged and I had to think differently. The Thing community that continues to really push me to think differently about being relational and service first. And then in the last couple weeks, I have a client who was asked to speak at a local lunch event for business leaders and entrepreneurs. And it's a client who I have worked with off and on in the last 5 years, helping them with stories and how are they articulating their message. And we've done a lot of deliverables, but we've done a lot of what I call brain work, where we're actually sitting and we're building strategies and figuring out, how does each specific person in your audience need to hear about what you're doing? How do we attract them correctly? And so he was invited to speak for this event and said, hey, I need help figuring out the messaging for my talk. I have some rough ideas of what I think it needs to be about. And we spent some time really over coffee hashing out kind of the big ideas in his head. And his question to me was, how do I take what just took us nearly 2 hours to kind of work through? How do I get that into a 20-minute talk? How do I bring home the core ideas in a way that connect with people? And so I helped him structure that talk and then attended the event just to see how it went and, be encouraging and supporting and that kind of stuff. And that day in the room, there was a number of people there who I had never met before. I probably knew 10% of the room, maybe 15%. And the rest, no idea. But one of those gentlemen heard the talk that day and showed up to an event the following week that my buddy who had done the talk was hosting. And we connected at this event and started talking about business and storytelling and how you help customers understand your why and the solutions you provide. And he said, I'm doing this thing. It's called the Purpose Driven Entrepreneurs Table. And the whole idea is I want to put 12 to 15 entrepreneurs in a room around a meal. And we talk about how we build a culture of relational networking and serving each other. I'm like, dude, I'm in, because I have seen what that approach to networking, what that approach to marketing does to your mentality as a business leader and how dramatically different it is than just I got to make a sale, I got to make a sale, I got to make a sale approach. And so we had one of those entrepreneur tables this week, actually, and 15 of us in the room for a couple hours. And I sat in that moment. I've got ADHD, if you can't tell by listening, if you haven't noticed in any of the previous episodes. And keeping me focused can be problematic at times. I'm really with you for a while and my brain kind of flutters away and I come back. But I discovered at the end of this event that 2 hours in, I was not struggling with that I was honed in on what was happening in the room, honed in on the stories that people were sharing, honed in about the ways they were talking about their business and how they wanted to structure their business in ways that were relationally sound, not just fiscally secure. And I realized in that moment that the deciding factor, the definitive factor was he set the tone and a culture in the room that we are going to be here to connect, to serve, to relate to each other. Yes, each of us needs to grow our business. At the end of the day, our businesses will only succeed if they grow. But the key to that is not more transactions. The key to that is deeper relationships where we know each other, we know each other's businesses, and we can actually refer people because if we listen, we know I know a person who can help serve you in that way. I know a person who could help fix that need for you. I know a person. And it's not just about a Rolodex full of names. It's about a Rolodex full of relationships that we have with intention built. So what I'm realizing in the process of all of this, and if you're listening and kind of going, Ryan, okay, I hear what you're saying, but like, what does this have to do with business? What does this have to do with the broader scope of, your podcast is about helping businesses make sure they aren't on the rocks. They actually, thrive. Here's the reality. Rooms are going to change your business for the positive or for the negative. The rooms you walk into will either kill you figuratively as a business leader because it's so painful to be there, or they will help grow your business and thrive. And there are several factors that I see that make the difference in the rooms you pick and show up for. And sometimes finding the right room means you have to try a bunch of them and have the right filter in place to know at the end of the event, was this the right room? And so there are at least 3 things that I have identified that you need to be thinking about when you are looking for places to network and build relationships that will grow your business. Okay. And I'm just going to start with this to say none of them start with a fiscal expectation. Okay. Here are 3 factors you need to be looking for to make sure you're in the right room. Hamilton had it right. You got to be in the room where it happens, but you better pick the right room or you're going to be in trouble. So idea number 1, you have to find rooms that encourage. I have been blessed in the last few decades, but specifically in the last 5 years, to have found a circle of encouragers. People who are more for me and my success than the way that I run a business or build leads and do my work. They can sit at a table and mess with each other and tease each other and harass each other. And at the end of the day, the tone of the event is, I want to have built you up. I may have teased you. I may have treated you like you were a sibling who, we were just messing with each other. But they're the kind of people that you want to go spend time with. They encourage you in their midst. They build you up. The way that they talk and ask questions is not only self-serving. It's about a mutual relationship. I was in one of these sitting over coffee yesterday, and I looked at the guys and I said, thank you so much that this is a place of encouragement. I know we are teasing each other. I'm just thank you that at the end of the day, I know that we are for each other. We're for each other's businesses, and we're for the business ideas that we are trying to build together in this new adventure that we're chasing. Okay. So the first thing about being in the right room is it's got to be a room that's encouraging. The next thing is you have got to find rooms that are challenging, that they are willing to help push your assumptions, to push your belief in yourself, to push you into areas that are uncomfortable for you to move into, but necessary for your success as an individual and as a business person. Because frankly, let's be real. We got into business because we saw a need. We did not get into business because we already had every solution and everything figured out day one. There are parts of being a business owner, parts of being a business leader, parts of being a team leader, parts of encouraging customers each and every day that we were not born knowing. And so we have to have a group of people around us and a room around us that challenges us to grow ourselves and grow our business in a way that serves others well. And that comes with a group of people that frankly will ask you questions you didn't want them to ask you. People who will look you in the eyes and say, I think there's a better way than what you just did. Who will look you in the eyes and in one sentence encourage you, and in the next sentence cast vision for you that makes you go, dang, the next 6 months of my life and what I'm focusing on in my business just shifted because of this conversation. Those are the kind of people that you need to have in the room. And I'll tell you, I already said I walked in a lot of rooms and I went, these aren't the right rooms. But when I've walked in the right rooms, I've gone, oh yeah, this is the place. And I have known so quickly, like within moments, I'm like, yeah, this is one of those. I don't know why. I don't know how. I don't know what my role is here. This is one of those places. The third piece of making sure you're in the room is you've got to pick rooms that not only challenge you, but stand alongside you as you grow. There are rooms that you will outgrow. There are rooms that if you actually take the steps necessary for you personally and as a business owner, a business leader to move forward and excel, you will leave the people in the room behind. Not because they're bad people, but because they don't have the same drive, the same initiative, the same focus and vision to keep moving forward. And that's okay. Because the interesting and really cool thing about relational networking, relational community building is I'm not leaving the person behind. They are still a part of my life. I still have some, responsibility and to connect with them because they're a part of us. But part of the growth process is I'm going to keep meeting new people and adding new people to my circle and growing and moving forward. Okay. And once again, it doesn't mean that if someone has chosen they're good where they are, that there's a problem there. So you've got to have three things: the room that encourages, the room that challenges, and the room that helps you to grow and that encourages you, that chases you on that. If you don't have a room that does those three things, I would encourage you to start looking for it, to start chasing a room that does those things. And it may be that it takes a couple rooms for you to feel like, oh, this room is an encouraging room. This room is a challenging and growth room. And there may be moments where it is not a publicly available room. You need to pay to get your butt in a seat. Okay. I have spent more money than I could even want to calculate putting myself in rooms that would do this kind of thing. Paying to be a part of things, flying across the country dozens of times to get into rooms, driving 4 or 5 hours to go meet with someone and have a meal with them and turning around and driving home the next day. Because I knew in that conversation, it was about a relational equity, building something in that moment that would not have a reward in that conversation, but it would in the future. And I would encourage you, find rooms that help you do that. If you financially are not in a place where you can be spending lots of money and putting money out to do it, find rooms locally. Try chamber events, see if you can find the right fit. Try BNI groups, see if you can find the right fit. I've got friends who've done BNI and had great success. I know somebody whose entire business model succeeds because of BNI. BNI was not a good fit for me, but for him it was. So maybe it would be for you. Rotary, I've got friends who are so committed to Rotary and what Rotary is doing. It was not the right room for me. Find those rooms. Be willing to spend the relational equity, the fiscal equity if necessary, to show up in the right place and find rooms where you find these kinds of relationships. Because your health mentally, physically, spiritually, as a business leader will be dramatically affected and changed when the people who are in your circle surrounding you are the right ones. So I encourage you, find the right room, get the right group of people around you. Think with intention, okay, I like this room, but beyond liking this room, will this room help me build the relational equity, the networks that I need to be encouraged, to be challenged, to grow as a business leader, to grow as a person? Now, I know this is a departure from how I usually host episodes, and you maybe can even hear it in my voice that this is something that I am increasingly passionate about, because I am recognizing the dramatic difference between walking into the right places and walking into mediocre places. Walking into the right places has opened more connections. I have had more coffees and connections in the last couple years of my life than I did in the first 10 years of business. Because walking in the right room opened doors and conversations to be able to help people, to be able to show up, to be able to just know more people in our community, know more people in other communities. I would encourage you to do the same. And if you are looking for the right room, I would invite you to come join me, join my wife, join our host of friends in the community that surrounds the thing Nashville, June 7, 8, and 9. Thethingnashville.com is the website. I'm telling you, something happens when you commit to be in the room, to be part of what's happening, to lean in, to serve, to not just show up to take, to not just show up to transact business and action, but to actually engage, to say, what would happen if I leaned in here? What would happen if I made connections and friends with some of these people? Come join us. Use code I'm with Ryan at checkout. Get yourself a discount. But I share that not just because it's a promo, but because I'm telling you, this room has changed my life, and rooms like it are changing the lives of my friends, because they're recognizing when I put the circle around me that I need, the doors begin to open for the business relationships, for the business contacts, for the business connections. But it means you have to put yourself in the right room. I spent 6 years in business not bothering with the connections, just hoping that my referral network would do what it needed to do. And it wasn't until I started to grow beyond that that I realized, well, I've been cutting myself short. Learn from my mistake. Learn from that challenge. Find the right room to be in. Thank you for listening today. Thank you for obviously a very different kind of podcast today, as really we think at a different angle about our business and brands and how relationally we can really set the tone and the culture for what we're growing. I'd love to hear from you if this podcast episode specifically has hit a chord, just because I think you can tell it's obviously something that I'm passionate about. So feel free to reach out, hit me up on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and let's continue this conversation. Until next time, blessings.